Today, we will begin a three-part video series on NWEA. I'm Jeana Williams, and I work at the Arkansas Public School Resource Center. I've had the opportunity to use NWEA in the school setting, as well as help others understand and utilize the data. NWEA has an abundance of information. And I've had educators tell me they really don't know where to start. They don't know what to do first. So this is a three-part series that is basically going to help us eat this elephant one bite at a time. And today we're going to focus on part one. Part one is all about why we need through the year data, this year more than any year, and how the growth data in particular plays a role in our accountability system. So to get started, we're going to take a look at through the year data. We have a lack of summative data from the spring of 2020. We always start the school year analyzing how students ended based on their summative data, and we don't have that information this year. So we have a real need for actionable real-time data throughout the school year. And NWEA gives us that opportunity. We will give the assessment in the fall, in the winter, and in the spring. That gives us another opportunity, which is to help us inform our instruction and personalize the learning as we go. And as I mentioned, this part one series is really helping us understand the accountability piece and why the growth data is so important in our accountability. So to jump right into the accountability, we're going to start by looking at ESSA. And if you aren't sure, ESSA stands for Every Student Succeeds Act, and it's a federal law. It replaced No Child Left Behind. We have different levels for indicators. So for example, we have elementary and middle indicators. And elementary and middle school indicators consist of weighted achievement. We've always had achievement. We've always been held accountable for achievement. It is for the first time weighted. And so we really need to understand how that weight works in the achievement indicator. We also have a big success with school value added growth score. We have asked for growth to be considered. We knew as educators, there might be some students we might not be able to get to grade level, but we might be able to grow them significantly from where they began the year. So growth has been a large request, and it is part of our ESSA. It is now one of our indicators. It's a success for educators. SQSS is the School Quality and Student Success Score. So those are the three indicators for elementary and middle levels. High school indicators, you'll notice, still weighted achievement, still school value added growth score, and the SQSS. The additional indicators for high school are your four-year graduation rate, which we have been held accountable for in the past. What we have not had, and this is another success for educators, is the five-year graduation rate. We knew that it just took some students a little bit longer, and so we do now have a five-year graduation rate as well. So let's jump in and let's kind of look at these indicators to see why this data is so important and how the growth in particular, it impacts our accountability. We're going to start with weighted achievement. In the past, we were given credit for students that could pass the state assessment. We were not given any credit for students that didn't. So it was basically done either you pass or you don't. It is 35% of our letter grade, and the subjects that are included in the weighted achievement. It's your ELA score, which is made up of English, reading, and writing. And you'll notice reading is in red. And math. Science is not calculated in your weighted achievement indicator. Science achievement is still in ESSA. It's just not in this indicator. So we'll talk about science a little bit later. But we're going to go in and we're going to learn how and why it's how the weight works. How does this work for teachers? So when I go in and I look you see this table, and I hope that you notice that we have point values, and we get 0 points for students that are in need of support. We understand that, we get it. This is a pretty big success. This is a celebration. We have never gotten credit for students that were close in the past, and now we get half a point for students that are close. Remember, in the past, achievement was you either met proficiency or you didn't. That was it. So now we get half a point for students that are close. We get 1 point for students that are ready. So I like to refer to that as twice as many points as students that are close. But this right here has a little tiny word that's a really big deal, the word or. For exceeding students, we might get 1 point, which counts the same as students that were ready, but we could get 1.25. So one or the other, either 1 or 1.25. Well, that tells me I need to find out how to get that 1.25. Because if I'm going to operate on a point system, obviously I want as many points as I can get. There are only 2 places that the department is going to look to determine if you get 1 point or 1.25 points for exceeding. They're going to look right here in need of support, and they're going to compare it to the exceeding. Those are the only 2 places they're going to look to decide, do we get 1 point for exceeding or do we get 1.25? So I have 3 scenarios here on this chart that you'll see here. We're going to go across by rows. So we're going to look at the top row first. This is our first scenario. So these are the number of students that scored in each of the levels. And we're going to look at the in need of support students. I hope you notice there are 5. And then we're going to go to the exceeding students, and there are 2. Since we have more students in need of support than we have that are exceeding, 1 point apiece for your exceeding students. So only 2 points for the 2 students that are exceeding, because the in need of support, we have more students there than we have exceeding. So if we go on to this second scenario, and we look here, we look at in need of support, you see 3 little faces. And we look at exceeding, again, there are 3 faces there. And since the number of students that are in need of support is the same as the number of students that are exceeding, again, 1 point apiece. The rule is, if the number of in need of support is greater than or equal to the number exceeding, you only get 1 point for every student exceeding. Well, that sort of implies that if it's less than, we'd get this 1.25. But let's look at this third scenario, because here's what actually happens. We look at in need of support, there are 2. We look at exceeding, and there are 5. We get 1 point for 2 of the 5, because that's how many students we have in need of support. We get the 1.25, or the weighted credit, for the 3 additional students that are beyond the 2 that are in need of support. So that's a total of 5.75 points for that exceeding category in this third situation. So here's what I want to know. I really want to know which group of students would be most helpful to move. I'd like to move my in need of support. I want to move my in need of support students so that I get points for them no matter where they go. So I know I'm going to get more points for them, but I also want the number of students that are in need of support to be as small as possible so that I can get that weighted credit for my exceeding students. I'd like to move my close students because I'd like for them to be ready, but also because I get twice as many points. If I can move my close students to ready, I get more points. I'd like to move my ready students to exceeding so that this number is higher. So I have more students exceeding so that I can get more of this weighted credit. So basically, based on this system for weighted achievement, I really want to move all students. I want to move every single category to the at least to the next level. Let's talk briefly about growth. Let's see what this does. In elementary and middle, Look at the amount. It's 50% of your letter grade. That's significant. That's more than the weighted achievement counted for elementary and middle. But really, if you think about what we do, we grow kids. That's what we do. So this is a big success. And, you know, high school would like to have had 50% growth, but they had a little bit, they had some extra indicators. So it is still 35%, but that makes growth just as significant as achievement, which is also a success. The subjects that are covered here, again, ELA, which is English, reading and writing, and math. Science growth, not in the growth indicator, but it is coming up in a different indicator. They do use the K2 assessment to predict the third grade scores. And Arkansas uses what we call the value add model. Now, when we go in and we're going to look at how the value add model works, we want to look at two individual students. So we're going to take a look at Tim and Anna. What they're going to do is they're going to take historical summative state assessment data and put it on a trajectory. They call it a trajectory. That's the lines that you see here. So the yellow dots represent the previous state summative assessments. Now, we know that Tim and Anna did not take the 2020 assessment. So the yellow dot closest to the blue dot would be 2019, then 2018, then 2017. And a line is built, that trajectory is built. What I hope you notice in this picture is that Tim and Anna's lines are different. They do not have the same slope. And that's because Tim and Anna historically have not performed exactly the same. So this is based on each individual's historical performance. On that trajectory, you see a blue dot. That blue dot is what's expected this coming year. So they already know what students are expected to score in May of 2021. Let's fast forward. Let's pretend it is May of 2021, and we've taken the assessment. And Tim, you look at Tim there, you see his blue dot represents what he actually scored. So Tim scored much higher than was expected of him. What they're going to do to help calculate growth for your school is they're going to subtract the expected from the actual. They're going to get a little positive difference. And next to Tim's name, basically, they're going to go put that little positive difference in a spreadsheet. And that shows, that little positive number shows that Tim exceeded expected growth. Now, if we look at Anna, Anna scored exactly what was expected of her. So when I subtract, now I get 0. The two numbers are the same. So if I put a 0 in that spreadsheet, sometimes that makes us panic a little bit, but here's what I want you to know. A 0 on that spreadsheet, or a 0 here in Anna's case, means that Anna scored what was expected. She met her expected growth. So that little 0 that goes into the spreadsheet actually correlates to an 80 in growth. That's not an 80%. That's not an 80 percentile. It's the raw number 80, because when you talk growth with our accountability system, an 80 means met expected growth. If you look at your overall school growth score, and let's say your school growth score is an 83, it means that your school was able to exceed expected growth. If you look at your overall school growth score and it's a 73, it means your school was not able to meet expected growth. It doesn't mean you didn't grow, it just means you didn't meet expected growth. All right, let's look at the other situation that could happen. Say it was a bad day for Tim. Tim takes the assessment and he does not score what's expected. It's the same process. They're still going to subtract the expected from the actual, but now we're going to get a little negative number in the spreadsheet. So If a 0 correlates to 80, positives are going to make that 80 bigger. Negatives are going to make that 80 smaller. So if Anna doesn't score what was expected, she still grew. Tim, on the other hand, doesn't appear to have grown. She did a little. She just didn't grow as much as what was expected of her. But both of these two right here caused negative points in the spreadsheet. Negative points caused the 80 to be smaller. So if we stop and think about who the students are that are the hardest to grow, you might think about your advanced, some of your very gifted students that are much higher than everybody else in the classroom. They may not be growing like they should. So it is possible that your advanced students could cause the negative points in the growth indicator. So really in that table, when we talked about we need to move our in need of support students, so we get points. We need to move our close students so that they're ready. We need to move our ready students so we can have more students exceeding than we have in need of support. We really have to move our exceeding students as well. We have to move all students. They all have to grow. So this is how the value add model works. And there's a pretty important formula I want you to notice here. I want you to understand what these pieces are made up of. And so you see the content VAS, and that stands for the content value added score. That's the ELA growth and the math growth. There's also ELP VAS. That's all based on your English language proficiency, and that's the growth on the ELPA 21. Those two are added together to give you an overall school value added score. That's what's reported in My School Info. So if you want to go in and look at your school value added growth score, remember to relate it to 80. 80 means we met expected growth. Anything higher than 80 means you exceeded expected growth, and anything lower than 80 means you were not able to meet expected growth. All of this indicates that we need a growth tool, because something that I didn't mention, let me go back and share this with you real quick. This expected score, this blue dot, that's not released to us. We don't know what that is. So we need a growth tool that will help us monitor through the school year if our students are growing and if they are meeting their projections for the end of the year. Okay. SQSS, School Quality and Student Success Score. In elementary and middle, it's 15% of your letter grade. It is made up of, excuse me, it's made up of attendance, science achievement. There's your science. Here, either students have passed, basically, ready or exceeding, or they did not. So this is back to the old way of scoring achievement. You either get a point because they made ready or exceeding, or you don't get anything. Science growth is here as well, and this is based on percentiles. Students that score below the 25th percentile, we do not get any points for. Students between the 25th and the 75th percentile, we get half a point, and students that score above the 75th percentile, we get 1 point. Reading at grade level. You notice that reading is here as well. Reading has been in all of the indicators for elementary and middle. Middle also includes on-time credits if it's applicable to your middle school. High school, however, still 15% of your letter grade, and they still have the first 4 that the elementary and middle have. They just have additional pieces of the SQSS. So you can see it deals with ACT, on-time credits, final GPA, advanced placement, international baccalaureate or concurrent credit, computer science, and community learning service credits. So all of these pieces make up that 15% for the high school indicator. Graduation rate, also high school only. You can see how the 5-year and 4-year cohort work. It all depends on when the student was a 9th grader for the first time. So to kind of go over it, weighted achievement includes reading. It's 35% of your letter grade. School value added growth score, it includes reading. It's 50% of the letter grade. SQSS includes reading. It's 35% of the letter grade. To me, this is glowingly obvious that what we need to focus on is reading growth in elementary and middle. So in order to focus on that reading growth score or that reading growth in general, we need that growth tool that we can monitor that reading progress through the school year. High school indicators, weighted achievement was 35%, included reading. Growth was also 35%, and it included reading. SQSS, 15%, reading. Graduation rate, the last 15%. Since achievement and growth are the same amount of weight, they're both 35% of the letter grade. Growth implies more achievement. So to me, it's, again, this screen shows that we need to focus on reading growth in high school. That growth is so very important in the accountability system. So how do we take this back to the NWEA? We know we have to have a growth tool. We need some way to track individual growth. We need to be able to look at every single individual student because that's how growth is scored on our accountability system. Every single individual child their growth is based on their own historical performance. Not because they're in 5th grade, they're going to have to be here. It's how they have done in the past. They get their trajectory. So we need a way to track that individual growth through the school year. We need to use the through the school year data to make instructional decisions now. When we get our fall assessment, we need to go in and analyze that data, make instructional decisions. We will talk about that in part 2, as well as part 3, on how you can use certain reports to go through and grab that data and make those decisions. We need a way to predict how they will do on the ACT Aspire based on their current performance. We don't get those expected scores. We don't have that trajectory. So we need a way to know, based on the fall data, how would they have scored on the ACT Aspire? Based on the winter data, how would they have scored on the ACT Aspire? So NWEA has what we call a linking study that will take the information and make a prediction to the ACT Aspire. Here I've just pulled a little screenshot from the linking study of the reading. This shows you the map growth cut scores, and then it goes down to the ACT Aspire predictions. So it will predict performance from the ACT Aspire. They do this for reading and math. There's a math table as well. It is based on their RIT score on the NWEA or their percentile. You can look at either one. It is available, as you can see there in this screenshot. You have the information based on the fall assessment, the winter assessment, and the spring assessment. So every time you give an NWEA assessment, you can go look to see what they're predicted to do on the ACT Aspire. This allows us to really identify students that are at risk of failing to meet readiness, students that are going to fall in that in need of support category. Who are they? Those are students we want to target and move to close. Who are those close students? We want to target those and move them to ready. So we can identify students at risk. We can also identify students that need enrichment. Remember, those students that excel sometimes are really hard to help. It's really hard to help them grow or to push them to grow, and they need that enrichment. and they can cause us the negative points in the growth indicator on ESSA. I've included a link because this presentation will be available to you. So you can go there and you can look at that. You can also email me. My information is here. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions on the ESSA information and how and why this tool is so very important to our accountability. Next, we'll be recording part 2, which is an introduction to MAP growth data and maximizing outcomes at the classroom and student level. So I hope that you have found this helpful today, and please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. Thanks.